All right, let's dive into the number a little bit more. Once you understand how this number works, then you would understand why the market behave, in certain way, and with a better understanding, then you will stay calm. You don't have to worry about, why when the market is going ups and down, roller coaster, and you will stick with your investment plan. And that's how value investor invest. So let's take a step back to yesterday. Why the markets, reached another all-time high, both the S&P 500 and also the NASDAQ, right? It was based on the so-called CPI data. Every month, the U.S. government, the BLS or Bureau of Labor Statistics, would release the so-called CPI, which stands for Consumer Price Index. It's an indicator of inflation at the retail level. So yesterday's monthly data release showing that the number in July is very good, as showing 0.2% increase from the previous month. So roughly over a year is about 2.4% of increase, and that's just a little bit over the 2% target inflation. And at the same time, the year-over-year number showing that 2.9%. Well, again, a little bit warmer than it should be, but still not too bad, right? So coupled with the deteriorating employment data from the previous week, so the market is basically saying that, well, inflation is under control and employment is deteriorating. So the economy is kind of heading to the downside, or has a higher probability of cooling down, slowing down. So that would really give the Federal Reserve a good foundation to consider cutting interest rates in September, in a September meeting, which I believe is on September 16 or 17, that's the Fed meeting. So investor has high hope of interest rates cuts next month. So that's why yesterday, the market just power upward to another all-time high. And then today, following the CPI release, today the BLS released the so-called PPI. PPI is Producer Price Index. Basically, it's the price index at the wholesale level. As you can imagine that, merchandise or goods, going from wholesale distributor to retailer and then into consumer, right? So the price level at wholesale level would have an implication on the upcoming inflation as well. So this morning, the BLS released the data at 8:30 Eastern Time, and the number is much harder than expected. The month-over-month number of PPI overall is 0.9%, and also the core PPI, which is excluding the more volatile energy price and food price, is also 0.9%. Now, this is over the market expectation or economists' expectation of 0.2% month over month. So more than 3 times of it, right? And also the annual PPI number is at 3.3% for the overall, and 3.7% on the core, excluding food and energy. So it's much higher than the 2% inflation rate expected. Now, what does that mean? Why the PPI at the wholesale level is so much different than the CPI at the retail level? Now, think about this. Quite often, all the goods will go from manufacturer to the wholesaler. And then the wholesaler will determine, hey, how much do I want to sell these products or goods for, right? And went to the retailer. And then retailer would price it accordingly for the consumer. And then the consumer will determine, hey, if they need those products and goods and merchandise, or, are they a must-have, or are they just the nice to have or good to have? And can they afford it? Do they still have job? Do they still get paid, getting a salary, so they can afford to continue to buy those goods and merchandises? So, all those are factors. But you can imagine that in July, when PPI is at 0.9%, CPI is only 0.2%, which means that it is possible at the wholesale level, businesses starting to raise the price. Now, it may take about a month, 2 months, or 3 months for that price to be reflected at the retail level. So in other words, what yesterday's CPI showing, the retail price index, it could be driven by the price level or the wholesale price level the month before or 2 or 3 months before. So if yesterday or today the wholesale price level showing that in July wholesale business are raising price, starting to raise the price, so that price increase, we probably won't see it until later this month or even in September or October. So that's why investor is worrying about, okay, now we have a warmer or increasing inflation rate, which may be reflected at the CPI next month and the following month. So that could be one of the reasons. Now, why would wholesaler raising price in July? Well, if you think about it, back in April, that's when President Donald Trump announced the tariffs on everybody. China, Canada, European country, all Asian country, Latin America, Mexico, everyone, right? And then after a whole bunch of kerfuffle, and then he go, well, wait a minute, well, we'll give a 90 days reprieve, roughly 3 months. So from April to July, 3 months, and some of those tariffs after the 90 days reprieve starting to come into effect. And of course, Trump implement more, later, right? Delaying some of the tariffs and applying a portion of the tariffs on Canada, Mexico, China, European countries, etc. So I think wholesaler or importer starting to go, well, now we do need to raise the price. That's in July. I think that's one of the reasons. Okay, and so how much would that be? We don't know. Now, right now, there's still some negotiation going on with the European countries and with China. That's the the main one. So will these tariffs will increase even more? Definitely Canada, right? The tariffs is higher now. And by the way, my son just ordered weightlifting pants, right, from a US website. It was $60-some US, and then plus 37% of tariffs. It was like clearly indicated as a line item. So $98 US for a pair of weightlifting pants. That's crazy. In any case, so all those tariffs are now getting into effect. And by the way, that's the tariffs that the US is imposing on products that was made in China. So by the way, that pair of pants was made in China. So ordering it in the US, that's where the tariffs apply. And when he had it shipped to Canada, there was no tariffs at this end in Canada yet. So just a heads up, I think we will see things starting to, price will be, all those tariffs will be reflected in the price. So I think that's one of the possible reasons. So now the Federal Reserve are dealing with a whole bunch of mixed data. Employments are deteriorating, showing that the economy is weakening. Retail price CPI is showing that inflation is stabilized. However, PPI wholesale price is rising. So should they consider cutting rates or not? If they don't cut, would it be too late? The Federal Reserve, they have two main mandates. One is keeping employment rates at a reasonable level. Second mandate is inflation, getting inflation under control. Now we have a mixed situation. It looks like employment, is deteriorating, while inflation may still have a potential to go up. So how would they consider the interest rates cut in September? That would be very interesting. So that's September 16 and 17. So how would this impact business? would business wait and see, or would they start to invest, spending, putting in the capital expenditure and etc.? So that would impact how investors make investment decision. And that's why it's driving in the market up and down and up and down. So for us as value investor, we don't need to worry too much about the short-term fluctuation in the markets on a daily basis. So what we should do is to also understand the situation and think about how these would affect the overall economy and how it would affect especially those industry and the company that you are interested in investing in, you plan to investing in, or those company and industry that you're already investing in. That would affect how you make decision in terms of when to buy, when to hold, whether you should sell. Hopefully this is something that good for everyone in terms of learning about investing. So have a great day. Well, tomorrow I'll give another update because tomorrow is the third Friday of August. Every third Friday of the month is the monthly option contract expiry day. I will share with you how I make money from option trading, not just to trade option, but to trade option as part of our long-term investing strategies. And I will show you how I make money every month, almost a guaranteed win in option contract while investing for the long term. So stay tuned. Have a great day.